Welcome to Test Room, your go-to hub for professional knowledge sharing. In the last video, we explored the architecture of Selenium, examining its key building blocks and how WebDriver communicates with the browser through the browser driver. In a nutshell, Selenium interacts with web elements to perform the actions such as clicking buttons, reading text, filling out forms. To understand how the Selenium achieves this, it is essential to know how it locates these elements. This brings us to the concept of document object model or a DOM, which plays a crucial role in enabling the Selenium to identify and interacts with elements on a web page. In this video, we will take a closer look at how DOM is structured and how it connects with HTML to perform the foundation that Selenium relies on to identify and manipulate the web elements. We will also explore the different locators that Selenium uses to pinpoint the web elements. Let us understand how the web pages are built and structured. Most of the web pages are built using HTML, the hypertext markup language, as it is a standard markup language used for creating the structure and content of web pages. However, not all the web pages are purely HTML. They also contain some extra elements. Basically, simple HTML based web pages contain an HTML which provides a structure for the content of the web page, like the headings, paragraphs, the links, images, etc. CSS cascading style sheets that is used along with the HTML to provide a style to a page, such as the layouts, the colors, the fonts, etc. And some web pages also contain the JavaScripts, which is often used to make the page very interactive, such as animation, dynamic contents, updates, etc. Here you can see a small example of HTML, how it looks like, and the tags like body, h1, div, p, h2, these are all these are all the HTML tags. They provide the structure for the content of your web page. These are like headings, paragraph, links, images, etc. Right? You can see here h1 is an heading and h2 is an heading type 2. Then P is for the paragraph, D for division and things like that. And along with that, we also have a style sheets. And if you see here, we are giving author as a strong. That means it will print the when I open this particular example in an web browser, then the author will be highlighted in bold. We are making author as a strong. Okay, so this is how we can basically tell about the style that we can apply for an HTML, right? So we can define how your layout should be, how the color should look like, and the fonts, the background color, foreground color, etc., etc. All these things you can define via the CSS. And the JavaScript, as I told, these are makes the page more interactive. In case if you want to load an animation and things like that, you can use the JavaScript in your HTML. So let us, I have already created a small HTML page. Let us go and open in the web browser. I have created a small HTML, book.html for the demonstration. Let us go and open this with a notepad. So HTML document starts with the root tag as document type. Then it has an HTML opening tag and HTML closing tag. Here you can specify an attribute as a language. Okay, so currently I am setting language as English. Then I have an header. Header, basically you can specify some metadata like what is the character set that you are using and things like that. And you can also give a title for your web page. Here the title is book example. Then I have a body which basically contains the actual part of your web page. This defines the opening tab body and closing tab body. Within that, whatever you specify, which will be the content of your web page. And here I am putting as the title as an header as an book details. Along with after that, I have a division with the class as book. Then I have an the title with the header too. After that, I will be giving an author, genre, and price. Uh, the that they will be displayed in a bold because we are giving it as a strong, and the this particular part, the author name and the type of genre and the price will be displayed in a normal text. Let us go and open this in a web browser. For example, I will try to open this with Internet Explorer, sorry, Edge browser. So if you see my the whatever I have given in the header, right? I keep it. If I keep this side by side, if I keep this side by side, you see I have given in the header, I have given the title, right, as an book example. Under the header, that will be displayed here. Okay, the title of your web page. Then I have book details, which is at displayed as an header one. You can see here. After that, I have an division. Then I have a title for the book title, right? So the title is this one, The Great Gatsby, and then we have an author, genre, and price, which will be displayed in a bold. Then the author name, the genre, and the price will be displayed in a normal the normal font, right? It is not in bold. This is how the browser renders the HTML document. Now let us understand about DOM. DOM stands for Document Object Model. The DOM is a programming interface that represents HTML and XML documents in a tree-like structure. Basically what it does, it breaks the entire document, HTML and XML document, based on their tags into the tree-like structure. Each element, the attribute, the piece of text is a node in this structure, okay, allowing the programming languages like JavaScript to dynamically interact and modify the content of a web page. If you want to, as a programmer, if you want to interact with the HTML or an XML, you cannot directly do that. For that, you need to use a programming interface called document object model, which basically loads the entire the document into the memory as a tree-like structure, okay, and using which you can dynamically interact with these documents, HTML or an XML document, and modify their content, okay, or modify or an update or read the content, and you can do a lot of operations with them. Okay, that is why the document object model is very important. And in the context of Selenium always deals with the web elements, and it in the background it works with the document object model to interact with these web elements. When the document object model DOM interface parses the HTML document, for example, if you take our earlier example, this particular document, it basically transforms this document into a tree-like structure and stores them into in a memory. Okay, there is a website. There is a free website where we can go and convert your document into the document object model. Let us go and try that. Let us go to Google and search for DOM viewer. Google will list down available DOM viewers, but for my demonstration, I will be using live DOM viewer. Now I go to my HTML document and copy only the body part and paste here. If you see here, the entire HTML document is converted into the DOM object, DOM tree-like structure. This is how the DOM stores the HTML document into the memory. Along with this, DOM also exposes the APIs to interact with each of these elements. For example, if I want to get the uh, title of my book, or the author of my book, or the genre of my books, it exposes an API to interact with these elements. So in a nutshell, Selenium basically uses this DOM interface, programming interface, to interact with these HTML elements. If you want to understand more on the DOM APIs, how it passes the documents, XML document basically, you can go to this particular link of W3C, where there is an utility that helps that basically demonstrate parsing of the XML. And if you see, this is how the XML looks like. This is also a bookstore which has books under which there is a title, author, and year. And what we are doing, we are using the DOM parser to parsing this XML, and we are passing the name of the file, or and here basically we are passing the entire content as a content XML content into this parser. Otherwise, what you can do, you can also pass the name of the document into this parser, so that it will uh, convert that document into a DOM structure. Okay, it's a tree-like structure, and return the DOM object, right? XML doc. Here the DOM object is XML doc, using which you can get the basically you can get the all these properties, right? You can, if you want to get the title, if you can get the author and year, you can use the XML doc to get these values. So if you see here, XML doc, they're using get element by tag name. They're using the tag name. Here the tag name they're using is a title. This is called as a tag, right? So title is a tag, and using the this title as a tag, they are trying to get the value of the title, okay, as a child element. Okay, let us go and try this. And if I run this program, it says Everyday Italian. So Everyday Italian is the title of the book. So you're trying to parse the particular XML using the DOM parser, and trying to get a particular title value using the title name. So instead of title, if I pass author as a tag, and it will get the child node of that. The child node for author is the author name. So I'll try to run this. If you see, I got this value. Similarly, I can also get the year. So what we understand is that DOM basically takes the entire XML and it into an uh, convert it into a tree-like structure, and then it gives us an XML doc as an object. Okay, it gives us an object using which we can interact with each and every element of the XML or an HTML document. These are the two important concepts I thought that I will put it into this video. The one is called as a rendering process. When a web browser like Chrome or a Firefox loads an HTML document, it creates a DOM structure that represents the document's layout and appearance. Okay, whatever you are seeing, visualizing in your web page is the DOM structure of an HTML document. This DOM is what user sees as a visual web page. Okay, the Selenium WebDriver interacts with this DOM by communicating with browser drivers. Okay, Selenium basically interacts with this DOM interface using the browser drivers. Example, Chrome driver for Chrome, the Gecko driver for Firefox, etc. If you want to see the how the DOM of particular the web page looks like, you need to go to the web page, right click, and you need to inspect. This opens up a new window bringing the DOM structure for the entire web page that is currently being rendered. So you can see the elements of these web pages are uh, bought here in a tree-like structure. So if you are interested to understand or know the property of a particular element within this web page, you can use this selector tool, and you can place it over the element of your interest. For example, if I want to know the property of automobile, the text box called as an automobile, then I click here, and this highlights the properties of this particular web element. So you can see it has a tag A, and it has an attribute called as an ID. The value of this attribute is now nav automobile. It also has another attribute called as a name with this value, and it also has the link. Basically this is a link. If I click here, it goes to another page, and link also has a text. Using all these properties, the Selenium will be interacting with these elements. Okay, and I'll be taking through the different kind of locators that Selenium uses to identify an element within the web page. Selenium uses below locator to interact with the web elements or an to locate an web elements. So first one is an ID locator. As the name indicates, it locates an element by their unique ID attributes. Okay, let us see what is an ID attribute. Let us go back to our sample web page and see what is an ID attribute. Before we go and explore about the ID operator, it is better to use some plugins in the Chrome browser that helps you helps you to identify these locators very easily. Okay, one of such extension is Selector Hub, and what you can do is you can go to you can open the panel by clicking these three dots here, and what you can do, you can go to the extensions tab and then go to the manage extensions, or you can visit the Chrome web store. If you are installing the extensions for the first time, you can go to the visit Chrome web store, and here you can type the or you can type the XPath, yeah, XPath helper or an XPath, and search. It gives a lot of recommendations. I recommend you to use Selector Hub. If you see, I already installed it. So in order to install this, you just click on this. It automatically installs onto your Chrome, right? So I have already installed it. I can go to the extensions and I can go to the manage extensions, and if you see, I already have a selector hub. I already have a selector hub. Okay, so what I will do is, since I have opened in incognito mode, this particular extension is not visible. What I will do is I will try to bring this into my normal browser, not in incognito mode, normal mode. I will try to open this, and then I will try to go to inspect, and I will try to go to this particular automobile. This will basically highlights the properties of this particular element. You can see here we have an ID called nav automobile. Along with that, you can also go to the extensions here and then go to selector hub, and once you open here, selector hub basically brings out a small window. You can click this inspect page and go to the element that you are interested. I am going to automobile again, and basically it automatically gives me all the properties, so which you can use in our Selenium script to interact with automobile. So we can interact basically with an ID, with the name, with the link text, or a partial link text as well. Okay, all or we can also interact using the relative XPath or an absolute XPath. These are all the different locators we are going to explore one by one, or the CSS selector as well. Okay, we can also use CSS selector. Okay, so for a time being, we are interested in an ID, and if I see, the ID is nav automobile. You can use this ID in Selenium script, and basically you can call uh, driver dot find element by ID, and you can pass this as a string in a Selenium script that go, if when you execute it, your Selenium script, and go and interact with this particular element of this page, this web page. That is how we can use ID to locate an web element. Now let us go back to our presentation again. And the second one is the name locator. It is again an attribute by a string called name. Sorry, a string called name. Let us go and see for this particular. Now let us take another item which is called motorcycle, right? So motorcycle has an ID called now motorcycle, but the name is navigation motorcycle. Let us bring um, selector hubs locator here. Let us highlight, sorry, let us highlight using this. Let us try to highlight motorcycle. I can go here and I think I can use inspect page. Yeah, so I went and highlighted the motorcycle, and it now it gives the all the properties of this particular element. And if you see, there is also a property called name. Okay, this is how this name attribute will be used. The value of this name attribute will be used to identify the motorcycle using the identifier called find element by name. Find element by name. When you are using a find element by name, you have to use the value of the value of the attributor name, right? So if I inspect this, and if I go to this particular element and I see this particular element has got an attribute called name, and the value of the name is navigation space motorcycle. So if you want to use the name as a locator, then in your Selenium script you will have to use find element by name, passing this as an value. Now third one is class name locator. This is again another attribute. Okay, the element has an attribute called class, using which you can locate an element using the class name. Selects an element by their class attribute. Let us go and see what is a class attribute. For this we will select another item. For example, I think there is no class here. If I come and select camper, does it as a class? No, there is no class. I think does this as a class? I think yeah. Mm. Okay, if you see this particular element by name text has got a class name. Let us go and select that, and the class name is next button. Okay, using which this attribute we can basically interact with this element. If you want to perform a click action on next, you can either use an ID, then you will be using find element by ID. You can also use a name, then it will be find element by name, or you can also use a class name which is called driver dot find element by class name, right? So there you will be giving basically the value as next button. And I can also use a selector hub to highlight that particular item. And I selected this particular item from selector hub, and if you see here, it has given us the ID, it has given us the name, and it also given us a class name. Class name is next button. So using this class name, you can also identify an web element. That is the third method of identifying an web element. So when you are using find element by class name, you can give the name of the class. You can pass the name of the class to identify the element. In case of next, you can give driver dot find element by class name, the value as the next button, next phase button. The next locator option is by tag name. So locates an element by their tag name, such as div, span, input, button, etc. Okay, let us try to see how do we get a tag name from our sample web page. If you see, for a next name, for a uh, for the next button, right? Sorry, for the next button, the tag name is button. Okay, tag name is the button. So from the selector hub also you got a tag name as a button. Using this tag name as a button, you can identify the next element. But the problem is there are many elements in this page with the tag name as a next. If you see selector hub, it says that there are 15 elements with the name with the tag name as a button. So it is little difficult to uniquely identify a particular element within the web page using the tag name. So generally we use ID or an name or a class name or an XPath to uniquely identify the elements. So sometimes you can also use a tag name, but you need to see that there should not be any duplicate or multiple occurrences of the tag name. Okay, this is how you can identify the element using the tag names. The next locator is a link test. It is used to find the hyperlinks. So in a web page, there will be a hyperlink. When you go and click that hyperpage, it will bring out a new page or a new window and things like that. And in such cases, you can identify such an element using their text. Okay, let us see what is the link text. Okay. If you see in this web page, truck, automobile, motorcycle and camper, these are all the links. When I click it, it will take you to the next page. For example, here it took me into the next page, right? So let us try to inspect this element. And also if you see here, it starts with the tag as a, and it also shows there is a reference, right? H reference. That means while clicking it will go to the next page. Okay, which page it goes, that basically is indicated in the reference, and it has a text called as an automobile. So if you want to identify the element using the link text, you can say find element by link test using automobile as an value. Okay, let us go to selector hub and see what it says. Let us go and highlight automobile, and if you see here, the link test is automobile. Okay, there are two occurrences of this link test. Okay, yeah. So we can use this as an is a value to identify the automobile element in a web page. Next one is a partial link text locator. It is similar to link text. Instead of using the complete text, we can you can pass a partial text. For example, in the for example here, so automobile is a link text as I explained earlier, but instead of which I can also use automobi. I can leave out LE or I can also leave out E. So here the suggestion from the selector hub is also the same. You can use automobi. Okay, instead of automobile, you can use the partial text as an automobi to identify this particular element. Next one is XPath, which is a very commonly used locator, and which is also one of the important locator that we will use day in and day out while using the Selenium, right? So the description is it locates the element using the XPath expression, providing the flexibility for selecting an element by the relationships, okay, attributes and the positions. Okay, so there are two types of XPath. One is called as an absolute XPath, which will be starting from the body till the occurrence of that particular element in the tree, or you can use some relative path to identify that elements. Okay, so you can identify the elements using the tags, combination of the tags, and combination of some properties. Okay, let us see how to write an simple XPath in our sample web page. So here, in order to identify the automobile, we can use the combination of its tag and its ID to write the XPath. So what you have to do, you have to come to this window and just use Control F, and then using this particular tool, you can hover over the element that you are interested and it brings out here. So it has a tag called as an A. So what I can do, and ID as nav automobile, I will copy this, I will go Control F, I will say slash slash. Slash slash will be for relative. It doesn't take an absolute, it takes as a relative. It takes from the tag A, then I have an ID, so always ID is, it should be start with at ID equals to the value of the ID. This is the value of the ID, then closing bracket. So it uniquely identifies this particular element, but unfortunately there are two occurrences of this element. Okay, so we can write a XPath in combination with the multiple attributes, right? So I use the tag, then I use the ID, and if you want to identify this element using the name, then I have to use this value here. Instead of using an ID, I can use an attribute at name, right? I can use an attribute as a name. So this is how the XPath basically works. Well, let us consider some more example as well. For example, this request demo, and if you want to identify the request demo, it is an ID, right? It is an ID, uh, and it has a text called request demo. So what we can also do is we can identify this request demo based on the text and see how to write that. It is equal to a at, I think, uh, text, or I don't know, we can use text, but yeah, let us try this. It will not work, so it is better that we use dot equals to then the value of that text. So it uniquely identifies this. Okay, let us go and see what recommendation basically the selector hub gives in order to identify this. Let us go and highlight request demo, and if you see, it has given this selector as, say, it has basically, yeah, it has given me uh, the relative XPath as like this: a at ID equal to down train, right? Yeah, this is how we can basically use the XPath based on the attribute. So I can also use basically a title, okay, title as an attribute. So instead of an ID, I can also use a title. How to use? At title equals to the value of the title. See here, it is the so I think I am missing colon here, and if you see this, I uniquely identify this as an element. So I can also trying to verify this, the same expression. Yeah, it says that one element is matching. Okay, one element is matching. So you can use the attribute in conjunction with the tag to identify the particular web element. This is how the XPath works, and so we can there is an, if you go to the Chrome inspector and right click here, also you can see the copy the full XPath. You can copy the XPath, or sorry, there is also, yeah, copy the full XPath. Okay, as I told, there are two XPaths. Whatever I am using here, slash slash, is a relative XPath, but if you really want to know the position of that particular element in the entire web page, then you will have to use the full XPath. Okay, that is called as an absolute XPath. I'll go to a notepad and copy this, and if you see, it starts from HTML from the beginning. Start from HTML, under which there is a body, div1, header, and this things like that. Okay, so generally we basically don't use the absolute XPaths. because in case if the structure of the HTML changes, then your identifier will also change. So you will not be able to identify the given element. So in such cases, we always rely on the relative XPaths in order to identify the elements. This is how the XPath basically works. The next one is also an important one, is an CSS selector. Uh, the CSS selector used to locate the element based on the CSS syntax, supporting the complex queries like selecting by class, by ID, by attribute, by hierarchical relationships. By hierarchical relationship. Let us go and check how the CSS works. And I have a detailed documentation how the CSS works. Um, Okay, CSS works on based on the different kind of selectors. It can use the tag as a selector, it can use the ID as selector, it can use the class as selector, and it can use the attribute as a selector. These are the four I listed, but there are many. You can use the child, or you can use the indexes and things like that. But I have not indicated here. It is only a basic. When we really go very deep into the Selenium tutorials, where Selenium, when I try to teach you about the locators, then we can deeply go and try to use the different kind of CSS selectors. Okay, in case if you want to use CSS selector with the tag name, okay, so you can give like driver find element by CSS selector as the tag is an input. Okay, for example, if the input is a tag, then you can give the tag as an input. But generally we don't use it because in a web page there may be a multiple elements with the tag as an input. Okay, for example, if you see, if you want to identify this particular element using the CSS selector with the tag name, I can give it as an input. Okay, I can use an input as a tag name, right? Can you give input as an tag name? So in case if you want to use a CSS selector along with the ID attribute, then you will have to use it as an hash ID. Okay, let us go and, for example, if you have an element with an ID as an username, then you can use via the CSS selector by CSS selector hash username. Let us go to our web page and see how to use this. In this case, I have highlighted automobile. In this case, if I want to identify this particular element using a CSS selector with an ID, I can use hash nav automobile. If you see here, it is also using hash automobile. A is a tag. You can also use along with the A, or you can omit A and use only hash nav automobile. Let us see what kind of recommendation selector hub gives. I will go and highlight this particular element, and if you see the CSS selector what it gave, there was no unique CSS selector. That is why it has bring in the real CSS selector. But what I can also give is I can try to check whether it is correct by giving hash, and you see he says that there are two elements that are matching, so it is not an unique one. That is why selector hub gave me the unique one basically. Okay, based on the algorithm that it uses. Okay, now this is how the CSS selector with the ID works. Whenever you are using ID, you should always use the hash followed by the ID value. Now let us see how to identify an element that has got a class and I want to use via the CSS selector. I have to use as a dot as an operator. For example, if the class value is login button, then I will have to use CSS selector with a dot here. Okay, let us go and see this as an example from our demo web page. In case if you want to identify the next button which has a class name as an next button, you can basically use dot attribute. right? You can basically use an dot attribute. Let us go to CSS selector and see what is its recommendation. A CSS selector gives class as an X button, but it took as an ID as an recommendation, and it has given it. But I can also try whether it works with a dot operator as an dot, see, dot next dot button, right? Dot next dot button, that is this one. So wherever there is a space, we will be using a dot operator. Okay, wherever there is a space, we will use it as an dot operator. That is why I have given dot next then dot button. Okay, so this is how we can use the class attribute with CSS selector to identify an element. Make sure that whenever using a class as an attribute, you will have to use dot operator. You have to use a dot operator. Even when there is a space, then you will have to use again another dot. Okay. Yeah. With the CSS selector, you can also use the attributes. Okay. Uh, Normally attributes has an value. For example, ID is also an attribute, name is also an attribute, right? So but if you want to use along with the CSS, you will have to use this particular syntax by CSS selector, where the tag value followed by the attribute name and the attribute value. For example, in this case, we have the tag as an input with the type has got as the value of the type is password. In such cases, we will have to use a CSS selector like this. Okay, so let us go and explore from our demo website. Yeah, if I want to identify the automobile with the name attribute using the CSS selector, I will have to do it as like this. So I have to use something like this. Here A is a tag and followed by a name is an attribute and navigation automobile is an value. Let us go and see whether our selector hub identifies this or not. And you see there are two elements that are matching, right? The two elements that are matching. Let us try to see for another item where we have a name as an audit trial and the value is the tag is same, so I can use it here. It should give me one matching. Okay, automobile there are two matching, but here I think it is one matching. Let us see, there is a one matching element. Okay, so this is how we can use the CSS selector with an attribute. So hope you understood this. Now Selenium 4 introduced a new way of locating elements, which is called as relative locators. So the new locators in Selenium 4, it's a new kind of locator in Selenium 4 that allows finding an element relative to its position. For example, if you give find element by a tag name as button, if there is an element above that or an element that is below that, you can use in combination with dot above by id, something like this. Okay, for example, in order to show this, for example, from our demo page, if I want to identify this particular element, that is the our request demo, I can first identify this div. Okay, I can give as an XPath or using a relative path, right? Whatever used relative path. Along with that, I can give the class name as social link. Then I can use below with an ID as an drown trail. Okay, this is how we can use that. Here we can give driver dot find element with 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 by class. If you see here it is by class as an social link, then below by id as below by id as down trail. So this is a new locator that is been introduced in Selenium 4, we can utilize this to identify an element based on the position, like left, like right, above, and things like that. This is the new kind of a locator that has been introduced in the Selenium 4. I think these are all the locators that we use in Selenium. Selenium. I did not go in very detail, but when I introduce the chapter of locators in my upcoming my videos, I will talk in detail about the locators for a time being. So time being, our intention was to understand how the Selenium basically interacts with the web elements using the DOM structure, and which internally uses the locators to identify the web elements. Hope you understood the concept. That brings to the end of this video. In this video, we understood what is document object model, and we also saw the different kind of the locators that Selenium uses to identify the elements on a web page. Hope you enjoyed learning with me. In case if you find this video useful, please support me by subscribing my channel. Thank you for watching.